Thanks, Hamish, and thank you to Elevator Sound for allowing me to put this together with these three amazing guests I've got here, Marianne Hobbs, Scratcha, and Vanessa Maria. All amazing at what they do in the world of radio. Today we're just going to be talking about the past through to the present, and then maybe the future of radio versus the algorithms and stuff like this. So starting off, really, I just wanted to dig into like each of your backgrounds in the world of radio and like how it started for you and what made you fall in love with it. So I guess first of all we'll start with you, Marianne.
How far do you want to go back? Let me do the short form for you because I'm incredibly old, so this could take all day. But when I was 18, I ran away from a tiny northern village and lived in a car park on a bus with a rock band called Heretic for a year. Yes, I did. I made a couple of issues of a tiny fanzine. Managed to blag a job at the age of 19 when I was still technically homeless at a music paper called Sounds. Then went to Hollywood, lived in a shed, rode a motorbike around in a bikini, as you do when you're in Hollywood in the 1980s, and continued to write. When I got back to the UK, the NME got in touch with me, and the editor said, we know a lot about Marxist politics and the Smiths, but we don't really know anything at all about rock music, so you better come and write for us. And then beyond that, I guess it was a question of doing lots of small bits and pieces on various different programs for other people. And I realized quite quickly, actually, that I was really atrocious at being a critic. I hated it, which was kind of like a prerequisite as a music journalist. You kind of have to have that critical edge. And in truth, in my heart, I've always been a fan, So I found that radio was really a much more natural home for me because it allows you to really platform and elevate the music that you care about. So I bounced between XFM, worked there for free for 5 years, doing trial broadcast periods, onto Radio 1, and now I'm at Six Music for my sins, but that's the short form.
Amazing. And how does that compare to you, Scratch?
1, 2.
Yeah, nowhere near as interesting as that, but I think that in my household when I was a kid, when I lived with my mum, it was radio over the TV. So we listened to radio much more than TV was secondary in our house. So my mum would always have the radio on. Even when she was watching TV, the radio would be on low in the background, and she'll finish what she's watching, turn it back up afterwards. So I was just subject to listening to a lot of like pirates like Ragga FM and even Choice FM, and when Kiss was pirate even. I remember my sister used to listen to that, my older sister. So I just grew up listening to a lot of radio and listening to people like Steve Jackson, the Dream Team as well, used to listen to them. And then I think when I wanted to start doing radio was, actually speaking about this the other day, I think it's from a time when I was really young and my older brother, we shared a bedroom. And my older brother come in one night, woke me up out of my sleep. I was at primary school and he was like, "You got to listen to this." And he played me this like old Prodigy track. I think it was like Fire or Outer Space, one of these ones. And I was like, wow, what's that? And I think from that, whenever I heard a piece of music, I just wanted to show it to someone. So when I started collecting records, I just wanted somewhere to show it to somebody else. So I started, finding out how I could get in contact with radio stations and got myself on a radio station. And it kind of went from there. But then snowboarding on from that, I think that was just really when I was just DJing and just trying to buy the records and play the records. But then I think it was the turning point was when I went to One Extra, actually. That was in 2006, so that was ages ago. And I went there with Terror Danger, like a grime legend who I used to make jungle music with at the time. It wasn't even grime at this point. We used to make jungle. And I was at his house and he told me to pilot for a One Extra show because I loved radio, I liked talking. So he goes, "Why don't you go for that?" I went for it, didn't get it, but he got it. Ultimately, I think they just really wanted him to do it because he's Terror Danger, right? So on his first ever show, he said, come up and, I'll bring you on and just we'll interview you or whatever. Had nothing to be interviewed about. I think he just didn't want to go on his own, them ones. So I went up there with him. And we did a few links and then did a few more links and I ended up staying for the whole show, right? And afterwards, there was a lady called Emma Stevens. You must know Emma Stevens. And she was like, you know what? You're really good. Like, do you want to come back next week? And then that was it. And I think I was on every show for like a year. Yeah. So I think my real radio sort of journey come from that start of doing that, which was by mistake, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And how about you, Vanessa?
My love for radio actually started in Bristol.
Yeah.
So I live in London now, and I grew up in Germany but moved, and I went to study psychology at the University of Bristol, hated it, can't do statistics, and at the time when I was trying to study, I was listening to something called Radar Radio, and there was a presenter called Snoochie Shy, and she had like really funny ad-libs on her show, so she would be like, cheese, and like, yeah, and reload it, and I was like, wow, someone is just being their full self on the radio without caring about like it sounding pretty or there needing to be like a soft or smooth transition, and she would just be like talking about how things were going wrong in the studio, and I really connected with that, which led me on to emailing 1020 Radio. Come on, who and Sean is the founder of the station, and that was really my starting point in radio. Luckily, you said yes when I don't even know what I emailed to you about.
I don't remember, man.
I don't think it was good. I just sort of said I wanted a show, and you said yeah, and I was really excited about it. And from that point on, I think I was on the station for about a year or 2 years. And Sean was amazing. That you really supported me in that space, and you encouraged me to continue like radio, getting guests on. And I remember after every show, you'd be like, okay, this went really well. And that you'd have a proper, like, I saw you as a mentor, even if you...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's a really, like, important time for me. And from then, I moved over to Foundation FM, which is currently in London. But I think radio really started for me in Bristol, and having people and amazing... I guess mentors and also like role models to look up to, who really like pushed me when I was young and just had loads of ideas and wasn't really that talented or like skilled at anything. I just had loads of energy, and I think that was something that I really, really cherish.
Amazing. It's amazing to hear all of that from all of you. I guess that leads me on to say, what is it that what drew you into it? Like, what made you want to keep doing it for all of you? Like, feel free, any of you, to go first if you've got any thoughts on that. What was the draw?
I was just going to say, just being able to share music with other people. Because, other than that, I'll just be, at home in my bedroom. So when I was going and buying these records in the record shop, I needed to share that. And the only way I could do that was by going to radio and getting on pirate radio. And that was that. Even the times when I couldn't share music or I wasn't on radio, I was still going and cut dub plates.
Yeah.
So it's just like the obsession, the fascination just to have music and have new music. I think that was it for me. Just to stay in radio for me was, and now it's therapy. So then it was like, now I'm just doing it just to clear my mind for therapy and just to talk. It's good to talk, get it off your mind. So that's why I'm at NCS every Friday, because it's therapeutic, to be honest.
Wicked, that's amazing. And for you?
Yeah, for me, I would completely wholeheartedly agree with Scratcha. It was really interesting about 5 years ago when I was 54 years old. I finally got an invitation to actually host a daytime show on Six Music. And I was kind of really reticent about that to begin with, because I'd always been broadcasting in a specialist area, which means you have complete freedom to build these very beautiful flows of sound without any intervention, from the constraints of daytime. But I realized also that for me, it was like there was a gauntlet on the floor. And I thought, do you know what? There's like a white picket fence that surrounds daytime radio. And I see it as an opportunity to come in and to kick down that picket fence and to bring in all of the music that I really care about, that's been segregated to specialist late night shows for decades and decades and decades into the heart of daytime radio in front of 1.2 million people. And, you know, I got my head kicked in the first instance, but slowly it's really interesting the number of people who've really come with me and been in touch with me and also said, basically, I thought I was going to hate this, but now I'm finding I'm listening to all kinds of music that I never would have come across, you know, and that's kind of what I'm doing there. I don't know whether or not I'll live there or I'll stay there. I see it as a place that I'm just passing through. But I also wanted to prove to the management that it was possible to do this, you know, and to give those artists who are just making the most astounding work that platform of 1.2 million people in the middle of the day. And I feel like it's working. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and that's what drags me out of bed at 5 a.m. and puts me back to bed at 10 o'clock at night. And I love it. I feel very grateful.
That's amazing to hear, and you've done amazing work in that space as well, especially at the BBC. Like everything my friend Silas, one of your producers, tells me as well. It's, yeah, I've even got my dad on your show nowadays at work when he's learned patios and stuff. So yeah, it's wicked. I suppose this leads me on to like now. Let me just check my notes here. Sorry. I guess, what do you think it means, like, in its current, like, format, like, compared to, let's say, a really saturated, like, algorithm and streaming space in regards to, like, music discovery, maybe on Spotify, Apple Music, or something like this? Why do you think radio is so important, or is it still important in that space as well?
It's important to me, and I feel like it's important to lots of people, just because it doesn't have, you know, it's not on TikTok and it doesn't have like engagement which you can measure in an online space. I think that's what makes it so important, because people can connect to it and share and like listen to music without having to see the person. It's not necessarily visual, and I think that's so special. It doesn't matter what you look like. You know, like the sound is so important, and I think for me, like being able to tap in at any time of the day and like discover something while you're doing something else and like be part of something that's bigger than you. It's important, especially now where the loneliness is such an epidemic. And I think I was talking to my friend about it the other day, and I was like, being able to like listen to someone else like carry you through your day no matter what you might be going through, and like be that friend that you might need, or that voice, and it's so important, because you need that in your life and that connection without having to like open an Instagram or feel like you're part of that algorithm that you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. I think the algorithm is cool, and you know the Spotify's and the Apple Music. Funny thing now actually is what we're getting now as a producer. I'm speaking as a producer now, a music producer, is the fight that the tech companies are having now with radio of who's getting the music first. That's interesting now as well. But as you were saying, I think with radio, just like for me, when I used to listen to Kiss back in the day when I was growing up, and listen to Dream Team and hear people speaking, and you know Mary and Hobbs as well. Like if you get your tune on your show, and it's like, this is the greatest tune that I've had. This, like, that's what you want. Like it's different than just, you know, finding something, for me anyway, online, and it's separate. It's like, you know, we're moving into this world where you're calling a company now and you're going to get a robot. Or you call a company, you get a human being. I think that radio still has that human element to it. And that's what I like. And that's why I like to give that as well. So I think that when I do my show, and the way I do my show, people feel like they can approach me in the dance because they enjoy what I'm saying and how I speak. And I think the music, when you do that as well, the music, you know, comes across differently. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's just, for me, it's a better way of hearing the music instead of just, you know, go and find it on Spotify.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I fully agree with you as well. And how about yourself?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think all the most interesting aspects maybe of broadcasting that tie into the epicenter of what would spool out into the broader spectrum of music begin with individual personal connection, and that can happen in real time on the radio. And then you build family, and then you build community, and beyond that you build movement. And I think radio can be really, really instrumental in terms of actually fueling those transitions. We certainly saw that with the whole explosion of dubstep, didn't we? You know, probably grime as well in the same way, you know, that radio works right at the epicenter, and almost it doesn't, every level is as significant, like you say, at Pirates, the online, the digital platforms, the BBC, whatever it may be. But once you create that momentum, it's so exciting to feel, not just as a presenter, but as a musician and somebody who's part of the family, that you belong within that triangulation, and actually you have a home there. And that for me it's really powerful, you know?
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, having ran a station myself, like in the heart of the community and that as well, that's now been closed down for over a year. I would say like obviously there's such the online content is so saturated as well from so many different stations. But I did a panel talk last year in London, like around this, and I feel like the community element of it is so important, and that people actually having a space to come to and connect and like share ideas, music, and everything like this. And that's something I really noticed, whether it may be a smaller station that's not getting the listeners or something like this, because people get really fixated on like numbers and just like I guess social media numbers, growth in that aspect, but the community side of it and the shared musical experience is definitely really important. It's something I've witnessed. So
I was just about to say, I feel like the community, the radio aspect of it, the community is getting little bit lost somewhere in the radio stations now. Everything looks fancy as well, you know, and all the stations that we know and love from before, like Rinse FM, you know, Deja Vu, etc. Radar Radio, when Radar Radio was there, you know, these stations brought the community in. I feel like there's less radios now who are like doing that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, how do you mean, if you don't mind elaborating, man?
Okay, so I feel like maybe Radar Radio and Mode FM are the last stations to invite the youth to come on in their groups of 15, come on with a DJ, and, you know, we're having that less and less and less.
Yeah, I agree.
As well, with artists know now that if they make their track, they make their, you know, their drill track, their rap track, whatever they make, they know that they need to run straight to the BBC, for example, because they're going to get PRS. So now we're not getting Donny's running straight to Rinse or Mode FM with that track. It's kind of changing in that way a little bit, which is a little bit sad. So as well with the kind of individualism as well, with DJs coming up now, DJs care about their... I mean, I'm going a bit negative now, but the truth is people care about their social media and they care about their own thing.
Yeah.
It's not like before when we used to go to radio and there's 10 of us, you know, we all care about each other. We're part of a crew. And I feel like we're losing that in radio a bit, and I'd love to see it come back, you know, somewhere where we can listen to that instantly.
I guess how do you, like, any question to any of you on sitting with me here is like, how do you get back to that space? And if you think that's been lost, that's if either of you two agree with that statement as well.
Yeah, there's a brilliant documentary actually, and I forget the name of it. I'll find it and I'll send it somewhere so you can watch it. But it's about the nature of Rinse and how Rinse happened. I'm sure you've seen it, Scratcha. And there's a guy in it called Henny G who used to build the aerials, and he tells the story, and it's absolutely incredible. He talks about going to B&Q to buy the copper to actually make the aerials, and then bribing the caretakers of the tower blocks to get an extra set of keys so he can get up on the roof with all his boys to actually build these aerials. And then there's quite a complex set of, steps that you need to go through to actually get the frequency, which you'll only have for a really short amount of time. And then there's Genius, who was kind of Lord and Master, on the door, cracking the whip, 50 quid a throw, you know, just to pay for all the materials that Henny G's bought. But I went up there once with Hatcher and Crazy D, and it was the wildest thing that I'd ever seen. Right at the top of a tower block in Bow, all the walls covered in graffiti, and every person in that room playing as if it was their last night on earth. And I feel like there's a space for that again. I feel like maybe, I don't know, everything's cyclical, right? You know, everything changes all the time, but I think there's a lot that can be learned from the power of those pirates and actually just doing it for the passion. But I'll find that video, I'll send it to Hamish and he can bounce it onto the website so you can have a look at it. It's on YouTube somewhere, it's incredible.
Yeah, amazing. I guess, do you think it still plays like radio still plays like the role it maybe did back in like the times you were talking about? Scratcha?
I think it still does. I think radio still plays a big role in breaking records and stuff. I just feel that now with the way the industry is, the music industry, you know, and the way the artists want to be seen and how they want to be seen, they might think that, you know, going straight to, you know, a major platform with their track first, so they get, you know, like Spotify or Apple Music might be like, bring your track over here first and we'll give you this X amount of playlist action. Whereas, like, you know, before, if we go back 10, 15 years, you might have went straight to Slimzy and that's going to be your action, that's going to be your, you know, everyone. And it's kind of different in that respect, I think.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Like where the music's going.
Yeah, so, right. What are like the key moments, I guess, for all of you in radio, like within maybe your own musical journeys that have been like so, like, I guess, pivotal for you, if you know what I mean?
I think Martha Radio has been probably the most pivotal moment for me, alongside 1020 Radio. Martha is an incredible radio host and was on radio and now is on BBC Radio 1. And she had put on a panel discussion at Peckham Levels for young people who were interested in radio just off her own back. And I remember her advertising it on her Instagram, and I was in Bristol at the time, and my friend knew that I really wanted to go. So I get a call and I was at home, and I answered it, and my friend, it was J-O-Z, and Josie, who's also a sick DJ, Josie was like, I'm outside, get in the car, we're driving to London, and we're going to go to this panel discussion. And I was like, okay. So packed my bags, jumped into the car, and meet Martha. And from that moment, things really changed for me, to be honest. Like Martha invited me onto her NTS show. She opened the doors for me there. She invited me into Resident Advisor to work on some interviews over there. And I think those were key moments that really helped me to understand like how community radio works and how it offers a space and a platform for DJs to showcase their sound, but more importantly, to connect with other people. And Martha really taught me about that and how to curate a radio show. And if anyone's ever heard a Martha show, like, you know that it is like amazing. Like, she really puts in so much time to make sure that everything runs very smoothly, and she has like little time codes in a document, and you know, I'm sure she has an Excel sheet somewhere. It's very like meticulously done, and her eye for detail shaped me into how I run my show today. So I think that was a key moment for me in radio, and yeah, it definitely showed me the importance of doing your research and understanding like how you want your show to sound for your listeners to like engage and like connect with you.
Is that something you both do as well?
I think the pivotal moment for me in radio was when I was at Rinse. I was at Rinse FM for 6 years, and I started there doing a breakfast show. Before that, actually, I used to do a Friday night show before Spyro. And then I think Sarah Lockhart, who runs Forward, an event called Forward as well, and she linked up with Genius, who was the manager of Rinse FM. And I think at some point they decided to go for an official license because it had been pirate for like, it's been on the radio 30 years now, so it was pirate for a long time. And one of the first things they wanted to do with the station was to create some structure. So Sarah was like, Scratch, we're going to create some structure on the show. Are you up for doing a breakfast show? Because they knew I liked to go on the radio and talk a lot, right? So they said, look, if you come in Monday to Friday, we'll sort out your travel, sweat a bit of money and get you breakfast in the morning. So I'm like, I'm down. So I did that for 6 years, but I can't remember what year exactly. But during that 6 years, we got an official license, and I remember the day that it happened as well, because I was in the studio and I saw Sarah come in, G come in, Charles, who was like one of the other management, Rat, another manager, Zinc, all the top managers was in. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get sacked today. What's going on? Like, something weird's happening. They all come in the room. I was thinking, what's going on? And then we announced that we went legal on the show. So yeah, that was a big moment for me, like a proud moment. And yeah, I got a big up Rinse for that.
Yeah, big up Rinse, man. And how about you, Marianne?
That was a killer breakfast show. I used to listen to it every day. It was so funny. God, I'm just trying to think. There's a ton of stuff, but probably I'll go to the beginning and the end. So the beginning was the first show that I ever hosted, which was my own, which was on XFM when XFM was effectively a pirate. It was broadcasting to a 20-mile radius in Camden on a temporary license. And I was there about 4 hours early. I'd done about 6 days prep on an hour show. And I remember the boss, Sammy Jacobs, walking across the room, and he passed me and he said, yeah, good luck today. Don't open your mouth until you've got something to say. And it's probably the best advice that I've ever been given. So that's the reason that I keep it quite distilled these days, you know. And then I suppose, you know, there's so many different aspects that I could talk about in terms of celebrity, but it's not really where it's at for me. The most important thing that I feel, hopefully, that I've been partly instrumental in recently is pulling in a lot of new voices into Six Music. So people like Afrodeutsche and people like Zakia Sul, who's just joined Six Music, people like Sherelle, who I hugely championed, and made a point of giving them my depths, which means when I was on holiday, I would ask the management to book these people to sit in my place, and kind of help to create a pathway for them to come into Six Music by, you know, just relentless dialogue with the management saying, we need these people in here, you know. And for me, it's all about the young generation like Nessa. It's like, how do we pull these people through and give them a voice? Because the reality is, for me, I'm 60 years old, and the only way that I can really stay relevant in any way and speak to an audience who are of a different generation is to hear the way that they communicate and to give them a platform and to be really conscious of what it is that they dream about, they care about, that gives them anxiety, that they hate, they love, how their language has changed, how their culture has changed. And I feel like for me, that is the most important element now of what I do at the age that I am, you know, in terms of purely at the heart of radio. Obviously, that's separate to platforming artists, but in pure radio terms, that is where it's at for me. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to do.
Amazing. Is there still quite a lot of pushback? If you can answer that question.
Do you know what? At Six Music, I have to say we've got a really fantastic boss called Samantha Moy, and she is really open. She's really progressive, and I think it's a tough gig managing a BBC radio. I think probably managing any radio station, to be honest, because there are so many different voices, all of whom have a different opinion. But she's come with me on a lot of ideas, also the All Queens idea, which I was told by other people would never work, you know. All Queens, we began it as a playlist 5 years ago of a half hour of all female and non-binary artists. I was told by certain people that it would never get past 2 shows. 5 years later, it's a playlist. It's been a collaborative night at Fabric. It's been 4 festival stages at All Points East. And it's been a radio residency that we created, again, to bring young female and non-binary voices in. So, and she fully backed that, you know. So I have to say, props to Sam Moy. She's a good woman, you know.
Yeah, that's some amazing work and point proven, I guess, that it was worth doing, isn't it? What do you all think the kind of the future of radio looks like in the like current sort of musical landscape and stuff like that as well? Okay.
All right. I want Henny G on a rooftop. That's what I want to see, teaching all the young generation how to build an aerial. But do you know what? I don't buy all the bullshit that algorithms are going to swallow radio whole, because I feel that the USP of radio is that, you know, we are live in real time, and you just don't make that connection with media in any other way. All media is dead. You know, everything that you see on TikTok, on Instagram, on Spotify, on any other platform, on television, whatever it may be, it's all been pre-recorded and loaded, which means you're looking at something that happened in the past. Radio happens in the present moment, and it's about the connection between whoever's hosting, the artists, and the listeners, and it is a really powerful and extraordinary triangulation. And for me, I don't think you will ever replace that. There just isn't another way, and I'm not going to hear it from anybody. I'm prepared to fight anybody else who disagrees with me.
I'm talking about the man them and the girl them, but you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like the for radio presenters and, you know, what we're doing, I hear that, but I'm talking about somewhere for the man them to go with the groups of 15 people and, you know, do their thing. I think we're losing that community.
Yeah, no,
community
fair
part
enough.
of it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. How about you, Vanessa?
Future of radio. I feel like we're losing a lot of third spaces in London. So I would say, I will reframe the question for my hopes for the future of radio. I hope that we have more spaces where young people can access them, and we have spaces that exist which aren't hugely expensive. Foundation FM has just had to move out of their space because rent was too high. And my heart really is of like community radio, because that's where I've started and have always been. And I hope that we have more of those spaces, and those spaces extend into workshops and maybe even like facilitation for studios, and it's not just a radio station, but it's a hub, and it becomes, I guess what I'm talking about is bringing back youth centres and having spaces for young people to just dibble and dabble and explore in a way that feels free and creative and isn't on the constraints of, you know, financial barriers or access in terms of like where people are based, locations. Like I wish the future of radio not just to be in London, but across the UK. Because when I was in Bristol, I realised how much of the opportunities are so London-centric, and how a lot of people who live in regional spaces don't have those, just the key, like the panel discussions that Martha ran. So I hope the future of radio, that we see some spaces, and we also see those across the UK.
Yeah, that's totally fair enough, and I'll back that. How do we like kind of make this like possible and accessible, would any of you say as well? Like, because accessibility and like opportunity is clearly one of the issues here that I can kind of see from everything you've said. How is that achieved? Sorry.
How is accessibility achieved in?
Yeah, like how do you make it more accessible for people? So like, you know, like you can still have 15, 20 man in the studio sharing a microphone or something like that. And like, what do you think the barriers are, I guess?
I think firstly, I would say go into community spaces and find community leaders and speak to people, ask them what they need. I think every community and every space and scene is slightly different. And I think there's not that many times where you'll actually ask, like, what is it that is, you know, what you need, and how can we support you? A lot of the time, the common thread is finance and money and the resources in order to be able to achieve the things. But it's not just also money, but it's also like equipment, and like maybe there can be like an equipment swap sort of a situation where if you're not using headphones or mixers, that's like someone younger than you who's trying to get into music can pick it up. And I think Elijah speaks about this quite a lot, who has the yellow squares. If I'm sure everyone knows who Elijah is, but I think it's really about looking at how we can use what we have, like the resources that are accessible to us, and like we can share them. And knowledge really is like power here, like sharing knowledge and like tapping into that.
Yeah, absolutely. If either of Scratcha or Marianne got anything to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Vanessa. But do you know, the other thing is mentoring too. I think I feel like it's such an important aspect that is often overlooked by a lot of big companies. So therefore, it's things that you need to really establish on the ground. I just done a brilliant session in Hull with Richie Culver at a tiny festival called Unthinkable. One guy runs it, that's it. And we did a speed mentoring session, and there were 4 mentors in the room, and the idea was that each young person who came in got 15 minutes with each of us. So there was a fine artist, there was a guy who runs a cassette label and promotes gigs from under his bed. There was a local grime MC, and there was me. And we ended up having to do 2.5 times the length of the session because so many young people turned up, and it was absolutely incredible. And I think the wealth of knowledge that they took from that combination of voices was incredibly powerful and has been really motivating. Already, you're seeing this group of young people hit you up and tell you all about the stuff that they've decided to do as a consequence. And I think the same could be said for radio. I feel there's a lot more mentoring that could and should happen on the ground, where the elders pass down their skill sets and point people in the right direction so that, as you say, it suddenly becomes clear how you might affect these ideas. Who should you reach out to for various different resources, and how do you self-organize? Because that's the key, really, isn't it? It's empowering young people so they can self-organize and they can do things their own way within their own communities. But if anybody is listening who's my age, 50s, 40s, 30s even, if you've considered mentoring, please think about it again, because it's such a powerful way to transfer skill sets and knowledge to the young generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any sort of changes you'd like to see from how radio works currently to kind of improve things in this area as well, other than what you've just kind of said there, other than mentoring? If you want to.
What would I change about radio? Do you know what? For me personally, I'm struggling to hear what I want to hear how I used to. That's one thing I would change. So, I moved out of London, so I don't know if that's part of it, but just to hear just raw energy, radio energy like I used to. Or maybe I'm talking like an old man now. But, when I'm looking into radio now, I'm hearing the presenter and I'm hearing well-polished shows and structured and presented, and that's great. But I think I miss just the raw energy of radio, the pirate radio used to give. And I think that even back in Dale 1 Extra, they had the pirate sessions. There's some stations who try and sort of mimic the sort of pirate energy that we had. Obviously, we have Rinse FM and other stations, but I feel I'm missing that raw energy. Again, back to maybe community and youth, and just youth going and doing what they wanted without someone telling them what to do. I miss that. I would change that if I could.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you think it's a case of youth being maybe less engaged and less interested in wanting to do it because they're so focused on maybe TikTok or Instagram, YouTube views or something?
Maybe, and also maybe there's a shortage of people like Genius and people like Sting, people in the community who saw what's going on and thought, okay, I'm going to put this radio station together for the kids around. Maybe we're losing people of that nature as well.
Yeah, That's fair. Anything to add on that sort of topic, Vanessa? Yeah, changes.
I feel like change, I think it echoes to what has already been said in terms of accessibility, mentoring, that's a change that I think would be really helpful. And in terms of actually supporting the stations that already exist and offering them stability and longevity, so it feels like a home that people can really carve out a lane in. A lot of the stations are struggling, and the community stations that I know of are struggling. So it always feels like, we have a show, but how long for, and how long can the stations exist in the spaces they're in, and always having to move and pivot. I think it sort of it changes the community as well. Foundation's been at Peckham levels, and now it was in Dalston, and now it's moving back to Hackney. So it's just, there's always all these changes that are happening because of a lack of resources. So I guess a change that I would love to see would be an injection of resources into community spaces, into radio, into broadcasting, programs for young people to join that are very clear and signposted, and just having knowledge of like, oh, if I go to foundation, I know I can do this like 6-week course and I can learn all these skills in broadcasting, and then at the end of it I'll have a mentor who can help me to move into like a bigger station, and it feels like a bit more held and contained, and I guess like guidance, making it easier for the younger generation is what I'm saying, really.
Can I add something to that? You know, it'd be great, an official pipeline from the smaller stations to the bigger stations.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Because, I mean, there is one, but it's not officially, you know, if you think about Represent and you think about One Extra and the BBC, Snoochie Shy, like loads of people. I think like an official kind of like a football, remember like a youth training scheme where you go from this team to that team and you're playing for England. An official pipeline for radio would be great.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's something I've kind of said when running the station myself as well. It's just like, because I've seen so many of like DJs like Vanessa go on to do like such amazing things, but there's no clear like sort of route, if you know what I mean. And it would be really good if that was outlined. And this is something I think I was talking about with someone before. Is it a case of like almost like centralising it, so there's like a kind of someone like curating that sort of thing and like putting the money in the right places. Yeah, that's just my thoughts on it anyway, really. But I think it's something that maybe should happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I did propose a long time ago, well, actually several times, to the BBC that they should use Maida Vale, the Maida Vale Studios, as a training resource. So you would create a live radio station, a TV station, and you'd have young people working at every level, 24/7, and you would broadcast all of this, but on an element of the website that had a warning on it, basically. You know, obviously these people are training, so if you come in and you decide to consume this content, you might bump into any kind of thing. But the idea would be that it was completely unfettered and that it was without the usual structure that the BBC imposes immediately on everything. The BBC has got, if you work for the BBC and you work in radio, there are structures that you need to adhere to. And much as I bend mine pretty far out of shape, I love the idea, as Scratcha said, of young people coming in with their voices just completely pure and making the expression that they want to make without any formal structure being imposed. And my idea would be that if you could use Maida Vale as a resource like that, and then, as you say, what happens is the people who decide that they love it, become really skilled, can transition into One Extra, to Radio 1, to Six Music, to BBC 4, or wherever it may be, but also with fresh ideas for those networks. So they are coming in with skill sets that they've developed, but without the sort of imposition of formal structure, and that could bleed into the broader network and make it much, much more exciting. But anyway, they sold Maida Vale to Hans Zimmer, so that didn't work, very sadly. Yeah, anyway, there it is. But I agree, on all counts, I agree with both of you completely. You know, I think that's, it's investment, it's training, it's mentoring, it's just cutting the cord with structure and letting young people express what they want to express. And then we get into a really exciting place, I think.
Absolutely. Do you think, like, the question to all of you here as well, do you think it still holds the same maybe like value like to the consumer and the end user and the listener? Yeah, like what does it hold value like it maybe used to back in the day, like Scratcha was describing, like to the end user?
I guess I can only speak to my experience and my peers. As a DJ, I think I'm biased because I find like new music on radio and I enjoy consuming it. And for me, it holds a lot of value. Does it hold the same value? I think the way that we see maybe like Radio 1, I've noticed that shift when I was younger, or seeing like BBC One Extra as the place that, you know, like you wanted to like be, and it was the be and an end all. I think things have changed in terms of like community stations can be a space where you can platform yourself just as much. And I think of DJ like Jotty and how she's become such an important and loved voice on Rinse, and she hasn't moved from Rinse. And I think seeing that she's carved her own space and her own platform and her own sort of community from her community station, like, is incredible. So I think one shift that I've noticed is just how, like, you don't necessarily need to move to a bigger station in order to excel or thrive or do the things that you want to do in your career. It depends on you and, like, the choices that you want to make.
Yeah, that's fair. Could everyone, like, swap radio stations or something every so often then? And, like, we have, like, a circuit maybe. I swear you said this before on one of your shows about, like, having a radio transfer season.
That'd be amazing. That's another change I'd make. So if radio had its own football transfer system, so, you know, we could have Mary and Hobbs on loan at NCS for 3 months. So, you know, do some...
Oh, bring it. Come on.
Yeah, that'd be great.
No, amazing. Yeah, this kind of takes me to the end of all my questions. I don't know if there's anything all three of you kind of really want to discuss today, or that, and if not, would you all be happy to answer any questions from people in the crowd?
Yeah, let's take some questions. Hang on. Is this going to feed back?
You got a mic
Can I
for
give
the
you the mic?
crowd?
Oh God. Test my feedback. Yeah, it's good. Okay. What's your view on Twitch streams? Because we listen quite a lot to live people playing raid trains on Twitch, which is basically people playing out of their bedrooms for maybe 200 people. But it's just lovely. It's brilliant. And we keep coming back for it.
Twitch streams. I'm not really on Twitch, me. I'm more getting into the whole TikTok idea. I'm not too sure about Twitch, but I know that for my radio show, I'm going to start streaming my radio show through TikTok. And I think that now moving into, like, you know, what the time we're in, I think, you know, having that visual aspect to your radio show can be helpful as well. But I'm not too sure about Twitch. I don't know if you know about Twitch.
I'm also not on Twitch, but I know that I know 2 DJs who use Twitch, Annabelle and Jotty actually used Twitch quite extensively during lockdown in order to, like, keep her community thriving and sharing music. And the question is, like, what are my views on it? Or yes. Oh yeah, I feel like there's a big space. I think. I know there's, like, a big DJ Twitch community, and I think like people really enjoy, like, locking in at the same time, the same place, not having to move, and seeing the visuals as well of the DJ, like, interacting with them. It's almost like a live FaceTime, and I know you can, like, send gifts on there and send, like, money rewards, and I know a DJs, like, actually can make quite a lucrative, like, career just being Twitch DJs. So it definitely works for a lot of people. But yeah, I think Twitch is another tool that people can, like, tap into in order to cultivate community and connect. So I think it's great.
Cool. Shall I see if there's anybody else? Hang on a sec.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you got one. Cool. All right. Go, Hamish.
Hello. Yeah. I love what you said about in the world of algorithms that radio is live. It feels like you can really connect with your audience and they're connecting with you. But I just wanted to hear, like, actually what's more live than actually playing out, and maybe what the difference for you feels like playing out to a crowd rather than playing on the radio, and that kind of perhaps lack of interaction with your crowd.
Oh, do you mean as a live DJ? Right, I see.
Yeah.
They're 2 really, really different disciplines, obviously, but I feel like the connection is actually very similar. I think you feel the real presence of your community and of your family of listeners when you're live on air. You can't obviously see them, and you can't hear them in the same way, although the feedback is pretty much an endless stream. But I don't know, I always feel that presence, and I visualize my audience across the world. It's really wonderful when all the messages are bouncing in, you know, from Peru and St. Petersburg, wherever it may be, you know, and you know that people are sharing this moment. There's this moment of real communion. And when you're sort of lucky enough to be sitting at the epicenter, you do really feel that presence. And it's a different dynamically it's different than playing in a live club or playing at a, I don't know, performance at a huge event or something. But I don't know, it's as powerful for me, even though it's, you know, it takes on a slightly different character. What about you, Scratch?
I think for me, when I go to radio, I always feel like I'm playing to one person. It sounds really weird, but I always feel like I'm just playing to one person. And I think that helps me do it without freaking out. Because when I'm actually in the club, then I will freak out. You know, I have to have a couple shots of drink or something to warm in. But, you know, I think it's very different because the pressure to make people dance in the club is one thing. You don't have that at radio. So, you know, I could play like, I don't know, a 160 BPM track and then play a brandy R&B track and there's going to be no problems. And if there is, I wouldn't know about it. You know what I'm saying? So I think I'll enjoy that a bit more than DJing in a club.
How about you, Vanessa?
Yeah, I really enjoy the freedom to just play all the like deep cuts and songs that you don't necessarily get to play in the club, and also, as Scratcha said, like the freedom to go from one song to another and it not making any sense, but it makes sense online or it makes sense on when you're broadcasting. So yeah, I think they're two very different disciplines, but I enjoy switching between them and being able to bring other guests on. I think that's the element that I really enjoy as well, like being able to bring in DJs that you admire and seeing how different and eclectic their music taste is from maybe the live club setting to like a radio station where now they're playing R&B, and I'm like, whoa, like that's amazing. I didn't know you like country music and you're spinning that. So I enjoy the creative freedom and like the lack of pressure from a crowd that radio offers.
Yeah, for sure. Have we got any more questions from the crowd? You've got one there. Lovely.
Hi. Oh, very loud.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your like just best solid advice that you'd give to a young person wanting to get into radio, whether that's like constructing your first mix or getting over performance anxiety or networking? Like, yeah, just what's your best advice?
I think what you're looking for is your voice, and you have to find it within. You're probably going to be terrible for a while. I was. Everybody who's been on air has been, you know. And there's a brilliant American writer called Malcolm Gladwell who talks about 10,000 hours of practice makes a virtuoso. And that doesn't matter what it is that you want to do. You know, it could be laying bricks, it could be playing a violin, but the same applies as a radio presenter. It's one of those things that you just have to get on and do it. And you'll be terrified when you start. Don't drink any coffee before you go on, for Christ's sake, for probably 2 days. Make sure you've got lots of water because your mouth will be really dry. You won't know how to breathe. And you have to develop this really weird language where it's, you know, you're communicating with other people, but they're not speaking back to you. So it's a different kind of language. But I think ultimately all these things you learn, you practice, and you'll just figure a way out, you know. But to find an authentic voice, and that means in terms of everything that you want to project, what it is you want to play, the type of features that you want to make, the type of guests that you want to introduce, all the music that you want to champion, it has to come from a place that's pure. And that's the best advice that I could give anybody, really.
I was just going to add on to that, I know that when I play, I'm playing anything I play, I want to play it. I'm never playing something that I don't want to play. I think, you know, I can hear in radio shows when they're playing stuff that they don't want to play, and I can really hear it. I think when you know what you want to play and you love what you want to play, I think the rest will kind of naturally fall into place. But I would start there, yeah.
For sure.
I would also add on to that. Are you on a station at the moment, or are you trying to get onto a station? I think in terms of getting on a station, number one, I think the internet is your friend, and it's also a tool that you can use. So connect with people horizontally who are also in the same space. Maybe there's a group of young people your age who also want to get on the radio. I think there's strength in numbers and really coming together. So maybe like all of you can put some money together, like book out like a pirate studio and maybe do a podcast first, use it as a pilot, and just chat about it, shout about it. Send that pilot on to your community stations, your local stations, maybe get some branding involved. You can go on Canva and like really have a look at how you want it to feel. And I'd say put in like a little, like almost like a press pack together to your local stations and keep emailing them, hammer them down. They might not respond, they might not reply, they get loads and loads of requests. So then maybe target some of the stations or target some of the shows that you like listening to, find the presenters online, DM them, engage with their content, look at the guests that they're having on their shows. It's really a part of a community and like uplifting each other. So I'd recommend doing that. And then once you've, had a few rejections, go back to the email and update the person on what you've done in that 3 months, the 6 months that maybe they've been ghosting you, and be like, hey, since you haven't replied to this email, I've done another podcast by myself, or here's a little jingle that I've made. And I think people really, people are busy. They're not ignoring you intentionally, but you just coming back and showing them how you're a self-starter and that you've formed a collective and you're working together. It's a breath of fresh air, and they need you, really. Do you know what I mean? You've got the ears to your ground. You're young, you're fresh, you know what's popping, you know what the kind of music you want to play is. And I think it's about building resilience, and people love people who can show that they're resilient. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, all that advice checks out. Probably got time for one more question from someone, if anyone fancies it.
Did you want to ask one? This guy down the front, yeah.
Hi. So when you're choosing music to play on your shows, particularly from up-and-coming artists or unknown artists, how much of that is your decision? How much of that is your producer's decision? And are there any compromises that you have to make personally for your shows when choosing what to play, which artists to play on your shows?
In the free play slots that I have on a daytime radio show, 100% my choices, and then I manipulate, let's say in inverted commas, quite a lot of the rest of the stuff. But yeah, I feel that it's pretty much fair to say that I'm solely responsible for the music. That music will flood into me from a billion different sources, but I also find it's really, really important to go and seek all the time. I used to use SoundCloud a lot, but now it's mainly Bandcamp, to be honest. And you just go out on the wild seas of Bandcamp and see what you can find. And sometimes it's entirely fruitless, but I feel like it's really important to come out of the circles that you always travel in, because otherwise you end up in the same place, just, traveling around the same communities. And actually it's really, really so important to devote that time, even if you come back empty-handed, just to go out on Bandcamp or wherever it may be and look for something new. So, but yeah, let's not talk about the playlist because it is what it is. And, I signed up to do daytime, as I said earlier, for different reasons, but I feel like that's the compromise for me. But with the airspace that I've got that's free, yeah, it's 100% mine, yeah.
Either of you got anything to add to that?
I'm not really to add. No, I think for me, where I play at NCS, everything's completely free. I was just going to say that Bandcamp is probably my favourite place to source new music now because it's such a wide range of things, and as well, I like to give a bit back to people so I can pay for music or pay for a lot of music. But you're right.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I quite like that. It's a place that, and I know the money's going straight to the artist as well. But you're right. If I don't, go looking on Bandcamp or SoundCloud, these things, you can get stuck in a loop of the same people sending you the same promos or the same PR companies. So yeah, definitely spending like maybe one day a week or once every couple of weeks to go and search for music. It's important, super important.
Amazing stuff. And I think that brings us to the end of today's discussion and the final one. Thank you, all three of you, for coming here and discussing all these bits and bobs.
Pleasure. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
And thank you to Hamish and the Elevator team for allowing this to happen.